to Cyber Therapy. This is episode 26, and we're so glad that you're here. My name is Ashley, and I'm Senior Marketing Manager over at JupiterOne, and I'm here with my co-host, Tyler Shields. You want to say hi? This way.
Howdy, howdy. How are you doing, Ashley? How was your Halloween? Anything fun and interesting happen?
Oh, yeah. My husband and I were like the lowest tech and lowest amount of getting ready ever in Halloween history for ourselves. We were T-Rexes for Halloween this year. Literally just got into a little suit, inflatable, and it was perfect. So,
Yeah,
it was great.
It's funny you bring up the T-Rexes because I almost managed to get it on camera, and I really wish I did. But I was watching out my front door, and
Like
a
a creeper?
skeleton T-Rex, the one that's all black with just the bones, the skeleton
Uh-huh.
T-Rex met the traditional T-Rex, and the two of them got in a fight in my front yard. It was the funniest thing I think I've ever seen. Watching those two. Like the one did a tail whip and whipped his tail into the other. I'm like, this is the coolest thing. I really wish I would have gotten it on camera. But I am getting over the flu, so I sound very nasal today. So I apologize for that sound to the audience. And I will do my best to mute when I cough. So if you hear some awkward silences from me, you know what's going on.
I guess it's a shame that I'm not making you sing this time. We could have done karaoke.
Even when I'm healthy, you don't want me to sing. That's never good. And I do have to do something else because I'm OCD. Ashley's always on the left, so I'm going to flip those images.
Okay.
She's got to be on the left just because it feels weird to see you on that side of the camera. Oh, look who's here
Hey,
to
Jenny,
see
how's
us,
it going?
Miss Jenny. Hey, Miss Jenny.
An OG
Jenny
Cyber Therapy host.
Yeah, she's the head of security at VISO Trust now, or head of marketing at VISO Trust. She's an old friend of mine for over a decade now. We've worked together on and off. So good to see her joining in the show. And actually, I think she made the introduction to our guest today. Is that correct?
That is correct. So without further ado, I guess we'll just go ahead and bring him on. David Hua, welcome. Woo!
Hello, everybody.
Round of applause. Everybody who knows him, who is tuning in live, please say
jazz
hi.
Hands, David. Jazz hands.
Jazz hands. Okay, you got it.
Welcome. Glad to have you here. I have heard so many good things, and just in our talks, I am just amazed at you and just how you approach security. So I'm so grateful that you're here on today's show. What would you mind giving the brief introduction, a little bit about yourself? How'd you get into cybersecurity? Just for the audience and for all those who are listening in, feel free to heckle and chime in.
Yeah. So before you begin, David, I heard a rumor that some of your friends, coworkers, et cetera, might be tuning into the show. If they do, and this goes for anybody that's watching this live, please chat with us. We love the interaction. We love it when people comment. David doesn't, but we don't really care what our guests want. We're not really guest friendly, so it really doesn't matter to us in the long run. But please smash the like, smash the subscribe, hit all the friend things, all the heart things, and definitely send some fun comments in the chat. We'll make sure they get on live. David, tell us a little bit about your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Where do you come from? Where do you live? What's going on?
Sure. So I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. I am currently the head of security at a healthcare startup called Cadence. Previously, I've been a CISO. I've been at fintech startups. I was director of data protection at Gap Inc. A bunch of whole other boring stuff. My background is pretty non-traditional for security. I have an English degree, which most people are going to be like, holy crap, we're not going to listen to this guy anymore. But really, I think where I got started for a lot of these things was when I was younger. I was a huge Counter-Strike nerd. So my biggest thing that my parents gave me was you get $300 to build a computer, which was a lot of money back then. So it was, how do you optimize for building the best possible computer, and how do you optimize your network so you have minimum latency? And that's sort of my introduction to computers as a whole, and how I sort of built my passion for tech and technology, and how I somehow fell into information security, which I think is an adequate descriptor.
That is absolutely wild. That background parallels mine. I'm a little bit older than you, so my version's a little bit different. But I remember, I don't think I've ever told this story live before, but I remember my mom brought home a computer from her office that was her doctor's computer so that I could help him fix it. Right. And I knew this much about it. And there was some kind of like processor board that was a vertical insert, like ISO board or something they called them at the time, that was a co-processor, made things faster. I put the ribbon on backwards, and I literally set my mom's boss's computer on fire. It caught on fire in my bedroom. And I had to go in my mom's room and go, Mom, I don't think your boss's computer is going to be working anymore. but it's the same kind of thing though, right? It comes from the curiosity, the need to want to do something. I ended up building my own computers after that. I didn't set any additional ones on fire. That was the only time I did that.
I think everyone does it once.
I don't know about the fire thing once. They certainly break shit once. But I don't know about the whole fire thing. But yeah, I come from a similar background, so really cool to see that. But I want to know, you mentioned optimizing networks. What was the point of optimizing them? So the latency between the game systems was slowest or fastest, or what was the deal?
Yeah, it was basically that, and like somehow I was one of the first kids on the block with a computer, so we actually had more than one computer in the house, and it was basically how do I? And I don't think I've ever told this story, so sorry, Mom, if you're watching at some point, but it was how do I make sure that our internet traffic for Counter-Strike was given priority on the network over my mom's traffic on her other computer. So that's definitely how that went down.
Got it. Priority. You got to
Fantastic.
prioritize.
Yeah. Curious question though. Why English? What were you intending to do with an English major?
I don't have a great answer for that. I think I think the running stereotype is C's get degrees, and I basically figured I had like a minor in English that became a major, just because I originally was like a bio-sci major. It's super weird. This is like a life story now. So that's how that went, and it just ended up being something that I fell into. And that's what I ended up graduating with without that much of a plan or intention really to even go into technology.
Nice. Interesting. So I'm curious then to know, with your non-traditional background, what are your thoughts on certifications and like higher education for cybersecurity? Getting into it from a technical standpoint, right?
That's an interesting question. I would say my running thesis here is I might be part of the last generation of security leaders or staff that had anything that doesn't have like a computer science or even an information security degree, if that's what you're sort of asking. I think a lot of people who are entering the field today end up having security degrees like coming out of college, and there's like programs that are built around it. I think when I went to college, now I'm dating myself, like class
It
of
wasn't a
2010,
thing.
it was not a thing. There wasn't really an information security major or program, or I don't even know if I had an idea of what it was. And I think a lot of new grads who are entering the field today probably come from a program. And I think when we talk to interns, they have classes on AppSec, on pen testing. They've done capture the flags. I don't know if I even had that as an option when I went to college, whereas today that option is definitely there, and people are just much more aware of what it is. And it means that I think people are sort of smarter and more cognizant of those things. But I also think that means people, tend to come into the industry with an expectation, right? They're thinking, oh yeah, pen testing is cool. I want to go break stuff. I want to go hack things. And I think a lot of times we find that maybe they're a little disappointed when they interview for a role as a security analyst and it's somebody who's working in a SOC, and they have to like work their way up and understand what that is. And that's sort of a wake up call for a lot of people when they don't realize like what those things sort of entail and how it's sort of different from the classes that they took compared to the work that they're doing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, there's like a running, I wouldn't say joke, but there's just running knowledge that like the business classes that you take, marketing classes that you take in college does not prepare you for the real world for marketing. And I would imagine the same is probably for security, where you learn a lot of the basics, but then the actual like day-to-day job is just so different from how they've painted what the day-to-day would be, right? And what's funny is on our last episode, actually, one of my friends, Tony, he's a pen tester, and he was breaking the myth of like, pen testing, you're thinking that you're getting to hack a whole bunch of stuff and have a good time finding the good stuff, when 90% of the time you're actually spending writing and, communicating what the issues are and whatnot. So, very, very interesting thoughts here.
Yeah, it's
But
kind of like it kind of reminds me actually of like one of those memes where it's like what the world thinks I do, what I really do, right? That meme, and what the world thinks a pen tester does is like a scene straight out of like a hacker movie with the hoodie up and the black background and the techno music going. And really what it is, 4 or 5 people sitting in cubicles typing reports. That's like 90% of offensive security these days. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, I think somebody that like I met early on in my career, his name is Chung. He said to me once that pen testing is not what it's chalked up to be, and I had a view of it back then too. And he was saying it's basically like 10% doing something cool and 90% defending a report that you wrote to everybody else, and then having to modify that report after, which I think is actually pretty cool these days.
That is so true. I spent 8 years as a pen tester. That is 100% accurate. He's not wrong.
All right, so you've transitioned now into leadership. So I wanted to get into some of the learnings that you've had over. Oh, yes, Tyler, you've got
I want to go
a
back.
question. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You want to go back in your time?
I do.
Even before
in
his
case you
English
can't tell,
degree?
David, we're
Like, how far
random on the show. We're random on the show. We're timeline agnostic. We jump around. I want to go back though. How did you get the first role with an English degree? How'd you get it?
Sure. This is a story that becomes really weird really quickly, and this is how all good stories over bourbon start usually. But
I got the bourbon. Let's go.
I was looking for a
Yes.
job out of college. I applied on Craigslist to a document review job because I was like, I will take any job right out of college with an English degree. Anyone out there with an English degree, you probably know how hard it is to get a job that isn't like teaching or something like that. So I took a job for document review at a small consulting firm, and during the interview process, they basically asked the question like, "How comfortable are you around computers?" And I was like, "Oh yeah," like told my Counter-Strike story, and they're like, "Great, how about forensics?" And I was like, "That sounds a hell of a lot better than document review." So I said yes to that and didn't look back.
So you literally fell into it. I absolutely love that story. I've fallen into every phase of my career, so I totally, excuse me, I totally respect that. And what it is you're just following something you think you're going to enjoy. Like I don't, people ask me a lot, like, how do you get to be a CMO or how do you get to be a certain level of person? I'm like, well, it's a path and you have to take that path. And if that path leads you there, then great. You can always forge that path in that direction, but it sounds like you kind of fell into something that you ended up falling in love with. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think that's definitely what it is. And I haven't left, so that tells you I still enjoy the work and I still enjoy the people and the technology. And I think it's probably one of the more interesting things out there you could be doing, just because technology doesn't really change, right? And it's like you go stagnant and you fall behind really quickly.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure when I first started, I never would have thought of something like AWS existing. And,
Yep.
It's a whole different world now where you can't do on-prem the way you thought of it, or companies are cloud native and they don't even consider what it was like when I started. Now I'm dating myself again, but it's just like, yeah, when I started, you're talking about on-prem data centers. And, yes, that still exists for quite a few companies, but there's so many companies that don't even know what that is. They're cloud native and they're just like, hey, like, what is that? What is this thing? What is non-AWS world?
What was forensics like back then?
What is forensics like? It was a lot of dead disk forensics, which is not the world we live in today either, where, especially from an incident response perspective, I think everyone is like, the things that I learned back then are probably not true today, where it used to be a running joke of just walk in and unplug the computer. And I'm pretty sure that is not what you would do today.
Nope.
Not if you want to get what's in the memory.
I don't even think you could find a plug. I don't even think you could find a plug to unplug.
Exactly. It's just, yeah, it was dead disk forensics. That was the thing that was popular, which again, like back in 2010, which is not that long ago. Dead disk forensics, or you image computer live and then you take the image somewhere and then you load it in something like NKs and you do something with it then, right? Which is just probably not how anyone really thinks about forensics today, unless you're talking about, like the way like law enforcement would do it is a little bit different. But from an enterprise perspective, we definitely think about it.
It's so true. I never really I've put thoughts into modern forensics and what it means, but I've never really kind of directly cross compared the two like you are right here, right? Because I come from your background too. I worked for the United States Postal Service, which was a god awful position. We don't need to get into the meat of what that really meant. But part of my job was knowing exactly what you're talking about, knowing how to do exactly what you're talking about. You go in, you unplug the system, pull the disk, clone it, figure out how to do that in a what's the word? The chain of custody, have an appropriate chain of custody, the whole 9 yards, reverse engineer the binaries that you dig off of it, who put what where to come from, what times, and doing the timeline on that. It's so different now, though. Like, in the cloud and how things actually operate in a modern forensics. Let's just not even call it forensics because it's not even the same thing. But incident response kind of handling approach to things is so drastically different.
Yeah,
It's only been
definitely.
10 years or so.
I know, it's crazy, right?
Like,
It's so
that's how
fast.
fast things have changed, which is insane. So, from your forensics role,
Oh,
what was your next stop?
I went to build the e-discovery program and forensics program at Gap Inc. And then from there, moved up in security engineering and became director of data protection.
Okay, so you've got enterprise, like big company experience, and you've also got a smaller company experience as well, which I think is very interesting to juxtapose. I guess we'll go in the opposite direction of what I was planning to do, because originally I was going to go small
Sure.
company, big to big company. So we'll go the other way around. When you were at Gap, and it's okay if you can't go into specific stories here.
Yeah, we
We're okay
never
with
want to
that.
we never want to run people into trouble with what they're talking about. So don't necessarily give us anything that's going to get you in trouble. But go ahead, Ash.
What were some of the things that you learned along the way as you went up the ranks, right? Because initially your initial work was very hands-on, right? You had to have some technical know-how to dig for information and whatnot. But as you climbed the ranks, like what changed or what contributed? What are the things that you learned that helped propel your career there?
This is a good question. This is a
Also
really
not in the show notes, so sorry.
no, you're
Sorry,
fine.
not
This is a
sorry.
good question.
We prep for everything and then don't follow it at all.
That's okay. That's way more interesting to shoot from the hip, anyways. I think when I first started, I was very rigid. Is probably the best way I would describe it. I was pretty black and white in terms of like, this is the process to follow. This is how it goes. I see this comment that you've now moved into the chat from the person who I'm talking about, probably. But I think I was super rigid. I was probably a pain in the ass to work with. I'm just going to say that out loud just because I was a young firecracker who thought I knew how things would work. And it's different in a larger enterprise when it's not all within your control. It's not as easy as like, hey, I think this should happen. This should happen. But as much as you have to work across the enterprise with all these different groups, all these different leaders, they may be in your org, not in your org. You're talking about a company of that size. You're not just talking about US, you're talking about international. You're talking about the difference between stores and like your corporate network and your corporate infrastructure. It's not as easy as I thought it was in my head, where I was like, yeah, I just have to say this happens and this happens, as much as having to explain your thought process, what it is you're trying to accomplish. How do you get buy-in from your stakeholders so that they understand what it is you're trying to do? I got lucky. I had some great mentors who walked me through this and put up with me, because I probably, again, was a major pain in the butt. But that was like one of the things that took me a while to learn, that it wasn't enough that, you just say like, I need this to happen and it happens, as much as you need to sort of convince people that what you're trying to do is going to accomplish something for the betterment of the program, and that you're going to have these additional capabilities to do these things. And I think that's actually probably one of the most important lessons I had to learn.
So you mentioned something in that comment, David, and I want to see if you can assign a value to it for me. How important was it as you were coming up through your career from snappy, whippersnapper, firecracker kind of guy to where you are today? How important has it been to you throughout that process to have mentors in your life? Right. I've actually done a piss poor job of finding mentors for myself, and I really wish I would have done it earlier because I think it would have jump started my career. But can you comment a little bit on how that might have helped you get to where you are today?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important. It's something that I think the takeaway that I have from it is I was fortunate to have good mentors at all the different stages of my life and my career. And because of that, I try to return the favor as much as I can when others are looking for advice, when they're looking for mentorship. I can probably think of different inflection points in my own career where I got lucky and fell into having somebody give me that sage advice, and I was able to understand and break it down. And then that's ultimately what I think contributed to, who I am today and how I got to where I am. And I think it's it's a blend of all those things. You have to be fortunate in the right place at the right time, but you also want to have, good advice when there's times that you yourself are not making an optimal decision, but someone else who's like impartial from that can see it and give you that guidance that can sometimes set you straight when you're veering off course.
Yeah, amazing answer. Before you ask the next question, Ashley, gosh, I'm struggling today. I just want to announce to the people in chat, I don't believe we can communicate via chat back to you if you're on LinkedIn. So if you want to be bidirectional with your chat, please hop on to either our Twitch stream or our YouTube stream if you want to be interactive. So back to you, Ash, with the next question. Go ahead.
Sure. So I wanted to press a little bit more into your journey up the ranks in Gap and ask the question, was there any pivotal moment where it finally just clicked for you, where it was like, oh, I can't be so, this is the box that we're going to play in, this is how I mandate everybody to play in, and it finally made sense to soften the approach with folks? Like, is there a particular moment that happened, or was it just gradually over time?
I think it was both. I want to say I was like beat into submission, as in like learning the lesson the hard way, where you ask for something to be done 5 times and you get blocked 5 times, and you sort of have to reevaluate, where did I screw up, right? There's part of that's that, and then the other part of it is having, it's not just mentors, but having peers who are willing to like talk to you like straight up and just say, like, hey, you're sort of going about this the wrong way. You might want to change your approach. And I think it's having that capacity to listen to both what your mentors are telling you, to what your peers are telling you. Because if everyone is saying the same thing, you're probably doing something wrong. So I would say it's probably both of those things that resulted in learning the lesson, for lack of a better term.
This is a great question from Jenny. Thank you. What are the biggest lessons learned that you took away from your career mentors?
I would say that the biggest lesson I learned from like probably one of my best career mentors is how to communicate. I would say this is probably the person I'm thinking of was one of the best communicators I'd ever met. Like when he wrote an email, like he could write. This is probably like super nerdy for security leaders who will laugh at me, and staff will roll their eyes at me. But he could write an email and communicate in like 4 sentences what took me 3 paragraphs to communicate. And somebody who can get that message across, which is really like an exercise in executive communication more than anything else. Like he was able to write an executive email so fast. It was clear, it was concise, it got the point across, it got the alignment it needed. And that was probably one of the lessons that I took away from him, and something I still strive to like iterate on today. And I think I don't think you ever gain full mastery over a communication skill, because I think that's an evolving process and something you have to keep working on. But that's something that I still think about pretty frequently of, when you send a message, when you send a Slack, when you send an email, how do you make sure that your point is coming across the way you intended? And in Slack and email, it's hard to read intention. So sometimes people can misinterpret that, and that results in like a political firefight you probably don't want. But just making sure that that is super clear, super concise. Like, can you use 3 sentences instead of 10? Like, how do you communicate that, and how do you make sure that point is clear and concise? I think that's
Ashley, I don't know if you saw this coming or not, but that's an English major right there for you. And so Jenny did ask a follow-on question to this as well, and said, of all the lessons you learned from your mentors, which ones have you felt like, hey, I have to pass this one down? Or which ones have you said, I'm going to pass this one down to others that you are mentoring or you're helping to lead today?
I think the communication piece is a really big one, especially for security, right? Because we work across different stakeholders. That can be in the IT org, it can be in the engineering org, it can be sub-teams within the engineering org. And very frequently where I find that security is in this intersection where we want something to be done to improve the security posture of the company. And we had to get alignment across different engineering teams potentially, or one whole massive engineering org. And we have to get everyone aligned that what we want to have done is prioritized and is actually accomplished. And that's like a really complex thing to break down in terms of how do you get alignment from the top down? How do you get alignment from bottom up? All those things I think are relatively complicated. And in security, we typically have this ideal path that we see, right? Something like to get a vulnerability remediated, to get an initiative pushed through of, implementing role-based access controls or something like that. And those are all really, really big, complicated things that getting different stakeholders aligned in is relatively difficult. Or we have a path that we want to take that other people have an opinion on, that they want to see a different route or a different path or different software that enables it, et cetera. So I think being a good communicator is really important to make sure that people understand exactly what the problem is you're trying to solve and why they should devote their resources to having that problem fixed. And that's true at the staff level to get security SaaS peers and other engineering orgs to sign on, but also at the leadership level.
Yeah, I think what you're honing in on is because you're accountable for things, but you don't actually have the control to do all the things, you have to win over hearts and minds. You have to win friends and influence people, right? And I think that is such an interesting skill. And just from talking with you, being able to hear how you talk about bridging gaps, building trust across teams and whatnot is refreshing, because I think to somebody who's newer to security, I've only been in it for a few years. It's like so simple. Something's broken, you go fix it, right? But half the time, most of the time, you're not the person who's responsible for fixing it. So how do you actually build those skills in across the org, not just at your leadership level, right? To improve security posture overall. So I'm curious, is there anything that you do intentionally to ensure that communication permeates like through your entire org and that everybody's able to help in that cause, right? Because it can't just, it does rest on your shoulders as a leader, but at the same time, you can't do it all, right? So how do you ensure that cascades through your entire security culture?
I would say there's more of a list of things not to do than there is of things to do. And what I mean, but I'll qualify that answer in the sense of, I think if you think about a lot of like historical security, which has led to this point where people like interpret security interactions this way or something like that, it's really at its root for some things like more alert fatigue than anything else, or like death by a million vulnerabilities. And a lot of engineering teams, I'm speaking for engineers and this is potentially not correct, so I'm sure somebody in my network will fry me for it later of like, you're not an engineer, you're in security, so you can't say this, but I think this is true. I think it's just a lot of security as it used to be, so I'll just speak from my own experiences, is you take a vulnerability, you take alert, and you cut a ticket to somebody to fix it, right? And there's not a lot of context necessarily provided.
Toss it over. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the more successful security programs are those that are able to cut through that noise and to make sure that there's context provided as to why something needs to be addressed. If you can provide the context and you can explain it to somebody of, I need you to fix this vulnerability because these are bad things that'll happen, and there's an exploit in the wild, and like every script kiddie out there is just going to blast your perimeter until they find something to exploit, like that's probably something we should invest some time to fix, and here's what'll happen if we don't fix it. I think that is a much more successful approach to have somebody prioritize what it is you're asking for versus here's a critical, our SLA says ASAP, so I need you to drop whatever it's doing and you just need to fix this in the next 24 hours. I think that is not a good outcome. And I think that's a trap that, I saw earlier in my career, and a lot of the more modern security teams are taking the more contextual approach, right? And that's driving hopefully more success and better interactions and building that trust.
Yeah, I totally agree. I feel like you used to run vuln fixes in isolation, exactly like you said. And today it's about what's all the context that you can give me around the issue so that I can fix it faster, better, stronger, quicker, with less resources, and fully automated if possible. And the closer we can get to that ideal, the faster we can get secure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's like a theme that I usually tell people is and this is the forensics guy in me, but if it's a repeatable, defensible process, you're going to be in a better spot, just because it means that you're consistently going to triage something a certain way. And hopefully you get it to the point where the conditioning is, if security says it's a higher critical, it's always a higher critical. And it's because we've done the work to assess it, to analyze the risk, to understand what the likelihood is of something happening, the impact of it, and then making sure that we actually are surfacing the things that have to be fixed within this time frame, and essentially deprioritizing the things that are, lower on the list, right? Maybe we have a
Yeah.
compensating control for it. Maybe the risk is just really low or something like that. But just being able to contextualize that and provide that to our engineering teams, I think just results in a more trusted relationship. And that's
So
the only way to move forward.
let me ask you a really, really a question that could be potentially difficult. Previously, old school ways, there was a certain way you built a cybersecurity program. You could, you probably tackle infrastructure security first, throw some firewalls in place. This is old days. Throw some firewalls in place, throw an IDS in place, worry about building a SOC to handle the responses to that, right? Maybe someday even move up into AppSec or whatever, right? Today it's very different in the cloud. Like the order you do things might be different. But I think you brought up a very interesting point in the sense that if context is the most important thing that we care about to speed up the bulk of what we're doing in cyber, how would you use that modern knowledge of building a cybersecurity program from the ground up? How would you approach it from the ground up today if you came into an organization that had nothing in place?
Yeah, good question. I think the most important context would be understanding where the crown jewels are that you have to protect.
Yeah.
Right. That's context right there, right? The likelihood of protecting everything from day one, it's pretty much impossible unless you've got a
Yeah.
program that was already there. If you're building from scratch, it's understanding where are your crown jewels, what are the things the company has to protect, right? Be that PHI, PII, PCI, confidential proprietary information, et cetera. Like, what are those things that the company needs to protect as like air and water? Right. And having that as your starting point of being able to layer your capabilities starting from there, I think is the most important thing versus just blindly proceeding and saying like, we're an AWS shop, I'm going to protect AWS. Like having that context so you can prioritize the order in which you go, I think is the most important thing.
And then knowing the context around the infrastructure that supports those assets, knowing all of it, how it works, how it interoperates. It's completely self-serving of me to go down this line because that's what JupiterOne provides, but we won't sell on this podcast. This is not a JupiterOne sales call. So Ashley, steal us back into the actual questions we're supposed to be asking today.
No problem. So, two-part question. One, this is more out of curiosity than anything. The time you spent rewriting your reports, was it because you needed to contextualize those vulnerabilities and why they were important in the business impact of it? Or was it more, or I guess, was there a different reason?
Or was it
That
because
you
your
had to-
partners were horrible writers and you're a really good English major?
Well, I will say I have luckily not had to rewrite a report in a while. That's a very carefully worded answer, I think. I would say if I think back to the last time I was writing tens of reports, it typically has been because like think back to a forensics perspective where you're retracing the steps that somebody might have taken in terms of clicks and execution, all that kind of fun stuff. Very technical perspective, and giving that to a business partner who has to make a decision, it doesn't really work that way, right? They need that color commentary to go around with it. So it's a little bit of a different lens, but it is still, they need the context to understand like what do these 5 clicks mean in aggregate, and how does that equal one step of a line of activity you're trying to recreate.
Okay.
It's a very cheaty answer.
Okay, so I'm gonna then also go back to when you're how do you encourage your teams to carry the contextualization? Like when you were talking earlier about how you're able to prioritize and that's great from your brain to be able to prioritize, but how do you communicate that and build trust across the organization to say the severity is what it is, it's not like it, and the actions follow the call to action that you are putting forth.
So
right?
so are you trying
that
to
requires
are you trying to get at like what's the style to push this through an organization that can be most successful? Is that where you're trying to go with this question? Like dictatorship, vulnerability, problem, severity, go fix it. Or, hey, here's some information, here's some context, let's learn together. Or hey, please go fix this? Like, what's the approach that you would take to get remediation done the fastest?
Yeah,
Like
I
things
would
that you
say,
maybe train your staff engineers or staff security
Right.
folks to do all the way up the chain, right?
yeah. So I think ultimately this is not a one size fits all answer, because I think what
Darn, it'd be so much easier.
this is ultimately getting at, like, what are the soft skills that you need in security to be successful, right? And
Hmm.
that's, I think the fancier term for it is having a high EQ, but I think really what it means is, are you authentic? Are you genuine? Are you approachable? Um, and that's like at a personal relationship level and also at a professional relationship level, is, can you instill that trust in others that you are an expert or knowledgeable about your domain? And are you approachable? Are you willing to be flexible in, your requests and your approach, right? The goal can be the same, but how you get there can be a little bit different. It's not necessarily a straight line like you're thinking about it. It might be a little bit jagged. You might take a step back and two steps forward, but it's being able to understand those things. And then working, for me, it's working with staff over time, because it's not anything that happens very quickly. But it's working with people over time to understand what their style is, meeting them where they are today and helping them up level that skill is something that's iterative and takes time. And it also is different at each level that you are, right? Like each time you move up in the ranks in security, the asks and the demands are really different, from an engineer to a senior to a staff to management level. Like the asks are a little bit different in terms of, do you have domain expertise versus can you influence others to actually, rally behind the banner that security has up for whatever the recent initiative is that they're chasing. But I think it changes at each level, and how you win hearts and minds has to change, like, based on what you're trying to accomplish.
So we do have another question from a YouTube viewer. She wants to know, has recent macroeconomic changes, the squish in the economy, impacted your decisions on how you scale your security program, budgets, resources for 2022 and going into 2023? And I immediately was like, I'm going to ask this one because, I work with lots of cyber startups, and I want to know, is it truly impacting how security leaders today are spending their money, planning to spend their money? Are you getting budget squished? What's going on there? And then, how do you communicate that internally? Is this a difficult problem for you guys for building your program and building your team?
I think
And you
it,
don't have to answer in reference to your company necessarily. I don't want to necessarily out your company, but in a general answer.
yeah, I think it depends on the scope and scale of the company you're at. So I think if it's an international company, I think that's really different than if you were centric to somewhere like the US and you don't do business outside of the US.
True.
Because I think that, that changes what you're trying to achieve, or what threats and what threat actors you're trying to essentially defend against. Um, this is a really complicated question, so I'm trying to figure out how to answer this. uh, I think, I don't know. This is like a very generic statement. I don't know that many security leaders that, maybe I know a few, but I don't know that many that say like they have everything that they would ask for at any point in time. I think the life of a security
Regardless of
leader,
macroeconomic, they still don't have what they need.
exactly. I don't think it matters if you're in a boom or bust economy, you're in a recession, or you're in the other end of it where the economy is doing great. And it's like, I think even in those situations, as a security leader, you still don't have the headcount, the budget, the resources, and everything that you want for all the new tools you want to buy and test. So I think it's always an exercise in, what are you trying to ask for and what's the return on investment. I think that's constantly the things that a security leader has to navigate. And there are times where the purse is a little looser or a little bit tighter, and you just have to be really, really articulate with your arguments in your slide decks, versus loosely asking for something in an email and getting a check mark or get feedback that says, like, go for it.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes total sense. So I want to ask a question about the nature of leadership. Um, I consider myself an okay leader. I'm definitely not the best that ever lived, but I've built some teams in my past, and I've heard from them that they enjoyed working for me. So I don't think it's a horrible thing to say. But
It
I
never
have a
came from
certain,
me at all.
no, she's never said that. Actually, she's always talked trash about my leadership style. But how would you characterize your leadership style for your team, right? And
Uh
how you choose to lead when you're first starting, you're solo, just getting into a new program, versus having a massive team of a dozen? Does your leadership style change? And also, are you more of a hands-on person, or are you more of a, hey, I'm going to hire somebody day one to help with the on the button, on the keyboard kind of work, and I'm going to take the leadership role? Like, how do you approach that, and would you consider your leadership style for raising a team underneath you? And does that change as the company scales? I know, like 4
All
questions in
right,
one.
10 questions. Yes.
Wow.
There you go.
Well,
10 questions,
the
and you
easy
have
one,
about
I think it
30 seconds
changes.
to answer. Go.
I think it changes as the company scales for sure. Because a 100 versus 500 versus 1,000 versus 10,000 like person company, it definitely changes. I would say similar to you, if I'm being self-critical, I think I'm an okay leader. There are always things I think that I could have done better or I could do better. I am typically more of a leader that will say I will hire the smartest people. Hopefully, I will hire someone who is smarter than me, and I will bring the smartest people to the
Yes.
room to help defend the
Yes.
security argument. But ultimately, I view the role of a CISO as essentially more of managing the organization than it is a hands-on role. And I know I'll get fried for this. I know in some orgs, the CISO role is really hands-on. That's not necessarily how I lead my organizations. I think it's much more important to have, especially as you get towards mid to large enterprise, you have to have that figurehead that everyone can associate with, what is security, what is the mission and vision you're driving, like what is the security team trying to accomplish, right? And you want that to be sort of clear, pretty clear and concise. And a lot of it is ultimately managing up, right? Managing your exec team, managing your board of, do they understand what the security program is doing, executing against? How are they accomplishing this? What do they need? And then guiding the team to be successful in terms of, what does the team need from software, headcount, budget, all that kind of fun stuff. And then also, again, like focusing on the soft skills to make sure that as a security leader, I think we have a responsibility to bring up that next generation, so that making sure that the next generation of leaders have what they need to also be successful, if not more successful than you are today. Because that's always the hope, is to find somebody who will exceed, what you set for yourself, and watching them hopefully do bigger and better things than yourself is actually, I think, one of the most rewarding things you could find.
Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you gave that answer the way you gave it, David. And yes, I kind of teed you up for it because we did talk about it in the pre-record, but it's such a great way to view things. Like, getting the reward from seeing others be successful is such a great way to approach leadership, mentorship, building a team. And it builds trust, right? People trust you when they know that you're there for them. So congrats on that leadership style approach. And I hope listeners learn from kind of that description you gave.
So I have one follow-on question that might be a little spicy.
Uh-oh.
And
when Ashley gets spicy,
that,
you got to be careful. Like, it gets rough.
is the motivation to see others people succeed, is that going to be enough to incentivize CISOs going forward? Because I feel like it's getting more complex,
Get out those
and
hot Cheetos. This is spicy.
it's as a security is getting a seat at the table, right? But it's also getting a lot more spotlight. So I'm curious to know, yes, that incentivizes you, and I love that it incentivizes you, but is that going to be enough to incentivize future CISOs?
In other words, are you the one-off? Are you the rarity?
I will immediately say I don't think I'm the one-off ever. So, I mean, because I can immediately tell you that I have like 2 or 3 people that have come up through my organizations that I'm secretly hoping to exceed me at some point in their lives, if not sooner rather than later.
That's the best feeling, man.
I think it's something that I would say more people have it within them, and it's up to the leader to cultivate that and help them grow into it. I'm probably weird in the sense that, like, when I was younger at like 25, I knew I wanted to lead, and others have that capacity within them, and you have to coach them, and you have to bring that out, and you have to develop the skills they need to be successful. And I think that's the harder thing, is being able to recognize which of your staff have that trait within them. Mm-hmm. And how do you work on that to the point that they find their voice, they find their confidence, and they're able to take that and boost up and then start climbing the career ladder when maybe they didn't think about it. Because sometimes some people have that drive. They're like, hey, I want to get promoted. I want to be a CISO. And they know that. And then others have that capacity. You have to like push them in that direction, help them take the first few steps, and then watch them accelerate. And at that point, your goal is hopefully to just help them continue to accelerate that and help them, break through that ceiling that's above them.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you for hearing my spicy question.
No problem.
All right. I think we are getting to game time. Yes, Tyler?
Game time. What?
Game
time. It was as most of the viewers, the video viewers, I don't know about the audio listeners, but the video viewers know that I tend to drink a little bit of bourbon. And actually, before we get into that, I do want to throw a little graphic up here. Josh Maddox. Man, I can't talk, and I've only had one bourbon. Josh Maddox from our team at JupiterOne sent in a photo today about how he's preparing for next year's Halloween, which I wanted to show the team. I thought that was a very gruesome and amazing and totally creepy Halloween graphic. So I just thought I'd throw that up there real quick and let everybody take a quick peek at. Gosh, I don't know if I could go to the house. Could you go to the house and get candy?
No, definitely
I feel like
not.
a hard no.
I think I'd be scared.
Except I think my husband wants to be that house, if I'm being honest with you. He bought like creepy baby arms like baby skulls from Michael's. And I'm just like, what are you going to do with this? And he got like a tombstone and stuff. So we didn't use it this year, but we may end up being that house next year.
Halloween is 100% my favorite holiday. And one of
really?
my,
I thought it was 100%. Christmas.
Like, no, Christmas is my least favorite. Ew, hard no. Halloween's 100% my favorite. And one of the reasons is because generally, we didn't do it this year because I had the flu. But one of the reasons is we get out in the cul-de-sac in front of my house and we set up a table. Everybody, all the neighbors in the cul-de-sac bring out like chili and cornbread and dips and chips and all this stuff. And we put out all the candy, bring out a fire pit, and everybody shares bourbon bottles. We have a blast. And so it's just my favorite holiday. But the best part about it is the bourbon, which I did find out that David might be a bigger aficionado / collector / bourbon nerd than I am. That's kind of crazy.
It might be more whiskey centric, but I'll take that.
All right, we'll call it whiskey centric because you're right.
Okay.
Whiskey being the overarching umbrella, bourbon being one chunk of said umbrella. You're smarter at whiskey than I am, but I think we got a challenge. Do we have a challenge for this scenario, Ashley?
We do, but first I'm gonna do our little suction divide that Tyler Peterson has created because we gotta use it.
Let's go.
I just love the music. I love the intro into the game time. So today on Game Time, we've got bourbon trivia. Woo!
Rally cap. Let's go. I'm coming for you, big guy.
So the way this is going to work is I'm going to ask a question first to David, and then I'll alternate. You get to answer it. If you get it correct, you get a point. If you miss it, then the other person gets a chance to steal the point. And so on and so forth. And so I have 10 questions. By the end of that, we will see where we're at. And then if we need a tiebreaker, I've got a bonus question.
And what she didn't tell you is every time that you get one right, I'm going to take a sip of my bourbon.
Well, unlucky for me, I'm on the West Coast, so it is not drinking time yet. So
all right,
you'll have to drink for me if I get it wrong.
If I get one right, I'll drink for you too.
Right.
I'll drink. All right. I'll drink on your behalf.
Okay. Ooh. All right. I like it.
What do you got going on there?
I have this.
What you got?
I got it in a white elephant.
I love it. I'm on a little Buffalo Trace today, little well. So all right, you can drink on David's behalf, and I'll drink on my own behalf when the other person gets score. Ready?
All right. Let's play. Just be clear, we're drinking when they get it wrong, or when they get it right, or both.
No, when the other person gets it right, you got to drink.
Okay.
Who cares?
All right, first question for you, David. What is the minimum proportion of corn that must be included in a bourbon's mash bill? 49%, 100%, 75%, or 51%?
51%.
Woo!
Correct.
Correct. So
That was, I got a drink. That was easy
yes,
button.
it's drink. Yes. All right.
All right, 1-0, bad guys. Let's go.
Correct. Tyler, for you. What is the minimum proof for bottling bourbon? Oh, I got to give you answers too, I guess.
Oh, no, he
don't
doesn't
get
need
multiple
answers.
choice.
No, they can come up with me. He doesn't get multiple choice.
I get multiple choice. Come on.
No, I'm the guest. It should be harder for him.
No, come on.
You
What's my
should know
multiple choice?
this.
I think I do.
Okay, fine. I will give you answers for this one. 80, 125, 160, 190.
Proof or percent?
Proof.
Because if you're talking 190, you're on the floor. Holy smokes, it's 80.
Correct.
Well, I was debating between 80 and 90. I wasn't sure. I thought it was either 80, 84, or 90. I wasn't sure which one it was because I've seen some lower proof bourbons that I've had before, which are generally not very good. But 80 it is. All right, 1-1. And I saw you drink. What way to pay up quickly?
Yes. Don't worry. I mean, I'm enjoying myself, so I've been enjoying
Playing a
myself.
drinking game while we're at work. I mean, you cannot
Yes.
be afraid of this.
Hey,
This is fantastic.
encouraged.
Yes, your boss is making you do it. That's the best part about it.
Alrighty. David, for you. By law, what is the maximum proof bourbon can be distilled to?
Ooh.
80, 125, 160, or 190?
I'm going to guess 190.
Nope, that is incorrect.
I believe it's 160.
Tyler Shields, do you know? What?
160 for the steel?
Correct. That is correct
I
for the
have
steel.
I have some 130s up there, so I knew it was higher than 130. And 190 is grain, like you're practically grain level by that point.
Well, I went for as high as I could go just to be like.
All right, I'm up by a point.
For now.
Good job.
For now,
yes. All right, Tyler. What is the maximum proof that a newly distilled bourbon can enter a new charred oak barrel to be aged?
Okay, I'm gonna say, and we don't need to do any more numbers. We'll just do straight difficult questions. I'm gonna say that's 190.
Incorrect.
All right, you get the steal op, David.
All right, David, you get to steal. I'm going to give you options.
Wait, what?
80, 125, 160, or 190.
I'm going to guess 160.
Incorrect. It is 125. That is the maximum.
Yeah, Tyler, we both suck at this.
Clearly. That's the maximum what again?
Maximum proof that a newly distilled spirit bourbon can be put into the
wow, I didn't know
barrel.
that. Seems so low to me. All right, I'm up by one.
I was erring on the high side and not the low side.
Yeah, me too. I thought it was going to be super high. All right. Go ahead, David.
All righty.
Let's see.
Basil Hayden Kentucky Straight Bourbon is a light-bodied 80-proof bourbon produced by Jim Beam. The name is easily recognizable, and this bourbon is available for purchase in most liquor stores. What is Basil Hayden's first name? Is it Basil, John, Meredith, or Beth?
Wait, the distiller?
Yeah, what is Basil Hayden's first name?
I didn't even know it was a person. Drink.
But clearly you're feeling at the other numbers.
Because I see Jed's question is making me nervous. So I'm going to go for Basil.
No.
Incorrect.
I'm going to go for Beth.
That is also incorrect.
I'm still ahead by
His name is Meredith Basil Hayden the Senior.
Wow, that's wild.
Tyler, we're getting our butts handed to us.
That's not surprising. Little known fact, Basil Hayden was one of the first bourbons, probably one of the first 3 bourbons I ever had in my life, and I love it. Even though it's a low proof, kind of watered down tasting bourbon, it's a nice basic daily drinker.
My caveat here is I did not claim to be a bourbon aficionado.
He claims to be a whiskey aficionado, which is true.
Yeah, I was gonna make this a whiskey thing, but then you pushed Tyler, and we're like,
of course,
I should have known.
I
should have known that
he's trying to give himself an advantage
all day long. I cheat. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. All right, Ashley, give us the next one. I'm ahead by 1 point.
All right, just let it be known that you're only beating him by 1 point, so it's really nothing to brag about.
Zip it.
Just letting you know. Okay, we're gonna give this one to David. Besides corn, rye, and malted barley. Which other grain is commonly used in bourbon mash bills?
Now you should know this one, Whiskey Man.
Is it wheat, oats, millet, or sorghum?
Wheat.
Well
Ta-da!
done. You're even.
I was like,
Well
what was the
done.
other
Drink
one? I
up,
was like,
Tyler.
sorghum?
Well, I put on the. I don't even know what the other two were. Those were.
No,
weird.
that's what I was thinking about. I was like, what's the other two?
I have no idea what sorghum is.
I don't either,
It
but
was
I
in
have
a
the-
trivia that I pulled.
I have the inside out rally cap on now. I really got to get going here.
Did you drink?
Oh,
Because you got it correct.
sorry.
So I'm hoping that after he drinks enough times, he won't know left from right.
Correct. That's
It's
the
highly
hope.
probable,
By the
David.
time we get to the
Highly
bonus
probable.
question, you're gonna kill it. Okay. Next question. Okay, so this question will go to Tyler because you got the last one correct. David. Okay. Aging in new charred oak barrels is a requirement for bourbon production. What is the legal minimum aging period in these vessels for straight bourbon?
Ooh, for straight bourbon, huh? 6 years?
Not correct. So, David, your possible answers are there is no legal minimum, 1 year, 2 years, or 4 years.
Oh damn! I was gonna guess 3, so that's not gonna work. Yeah, I have no idea. I'm gonna guess 1 year.
Close, 2 years.
2. Okay.
Oh, you got
Yeah,
you got
something
your
to
second
get.
one wrong, so that's -1 points, right?
Correct.
I think we're tied right now, cheater.
Alrighty. This question is for David. Bourbon aged for a period less than 4 years must contain an age statement on its label. While it's not a legal requirement above this point, some producers, like Knob Creek, choose to include an age statement anyways. What does this number signify? Does it signify the average age of the spirit, the age of the oldest spirit, or the age of the youngest spirit in the bottle?
What a good question. Wow, you really dug on the internet for these questions.
Holy cow!
I did.
Yeah.
I learned a lot.
I'm gonna go with average age.
Incorrect. Tyler, do you know for the steal?
I would imagine
Average?
it's
It's
probably
not
the
average, so
youngest.
it's either oldest
It's
or
the
youngest.
youngest.
Wow, good job. Yes.
because if you're going to offer something as an age statement, you can't say it's 25 when there's a bunch of 4-year mixed in there. It would just be dirty to say that. So it just makes sense. Drink. It just makes sense to have to say the youngest age.
Done. Okay.
All right, I'm ahead by
Tyler is
1.
up by 1.
Let's go.
Alrighty.
Tyler, I'm
Next
a guest.
question.
I'm letting you win. Just let it be known.
Yeah, I don't think so, David.
Who did I give that question to first? Oh, I gave that to David. So this one is for Tyler.
Yep.
While aging in Kentucky, around 4% of the volume of the spirit in a barrel is lost each year due to
I already know
evaporation.
this. I don't even need to hear the question. It's called the angel's share.
Wow, good job. Yes. That was too easy
That's
for
the part
you.
that loses to evaporation, and
That's
that's
because
where
there's a TV commercial about that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
No, it's because I got a bottle of Angel's Envy up there, and I
Yeah,
looked up.
it was the commercial for Angels Envy.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. All right, I'm up 2. I might actually win
is
this
correct.
week. I never win anymore. She usually sets this so far towards the guest that I can't win.
Okay. I'm sorry that this question is landing on you, David.
That's okay. C.
Bourbon is responsible for the invention of what common utensil today? The spoon, the straw, the spatula, or a sieve?
Whoa, no idea. I'm gonna go with bourbon is. I'm gonna go with the sieve.
Nope. Incorrect. Tyler,
The
do you know
spoon,
the
the
answer?
straw, or the what? Were the other 3?
Spatula.
Spoon,
I think
straw,
it's a straw
spatula,
because
sieve.
that's what they use when they pull it out of the barrel.
I mean, that's not the right logic, but that is correct. This is straw.
I'm glad I got it wrong, illogically correct. I'm glad I got it correct illogically, but I got it.
I like it.
How? Give us the story. How would they invent the straw?
Apparently, the guy who invented the straw, he was sipping his mint julep out of a rye, a hollowed out rye
a reed
grass.
of rye?
Reed,
Oh my
yeah.
God.
And so, but then he didn't like the flavor. And so he got tired of it. So he made a paper straw, basically, and then proceeded to then
Very
patent it.
Well, I was completely wrong, but yeah, right. I'll take the point. I think I'm ahead 2.
3.
You are ahead 3.
Oh, you're in
Okay.
trouble now. So how many more questions we
So
got?
this is the last question, and I'm going to start with David here.
But it's worth 5 points, so just saying.
It's however many you can list. For everything that you can list,
Ooh.
you get a point.
Okay.
Okay, so the question is, and we're going to start with you, David. The popular Kentucky Bourbon Trail began in 1999 and was the creation of the Kentucky Distillers Association. At that time, only 7 distilleries were part of the Kentucky Bourbon Trail.
Who were
Can you
the
name them?
OGs? Who were the OGs?
Oh man, this is interesting. See,
Bourbon
let's see
Trail.
if I get any of this right, because I actually genuinely don't know bourbon as well. I'm gonna say Wild Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's one.
God, my bourbon knowledge is gonna be so tested here. Wild Turkey. I'm gonna guess Buffalo Trace.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's the second one.
Uh,
Oh my god.
Bullet?
Mm-mm.
Oh, so do I get to guess now?
Yeah, does he get to guess, or how far do I go? Do I just get to
Until you
rattle
run out
off
of
until you
guesses.
say no?
until you give up guesses.
She always makes
really?
it so the guest wins. She always makes it so the guest wins.
I'm gonna guess Basil Hayden. Let's see.
Is
Man,
Basil
I
Hayden
don't know
That is
that
not
much
correct.
bourbon. Huh?
No.
Man, bourbons.
I'm such a Buffalo Trace
Blanton?
snob. I can't think of any others.
I can't think of any others. You can let me know, Tyler. I don't know my bourbons.
Is Sazerac one of them?
Nope.
Not
Sazerac,
Blanton's.
fun fact, actually, Sazerac was the 8th distillery in the area that didn't join until 2008.
I was so close. I was off by 1.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. If you can
Mark?
get one more, you're going to tie me.
Correct.
Maker's Mark?
That is another one, yes.
It's a tie. Can you get one more for the win?
Man, I don't know bourbons as well. I'm trying to think. Weller?
Mm-mm.
Weller's part of BTAC.
But it does begin with the same first letter. There is one that begins with the same first letter.
No.
It starts with a W?
Whistle Pig?
Mm-mm.
No, Whistle Pig's a rye based out of
Yeah.
Chicago or something.
I'm trying to think of the W's.
I can't think of any W's at all.
There's also another common one that begins
What about
with
Knob
a
Creek?
number. Nope.
Knob Creek is new. Elijah Craig would be new. Colonel Taylor would be new.
All right, count us down. We're tied, Ashley. When are you going to call this thing? Or are you going to
Yeah.
give them all night and we'll just run live for
we could do this. Oh man, a W. I don't actually know of any other W's. I'm sure somebody else.
There's another one that begins with a number.
The number? What?
9 Roses?
4 Roses.
4 Roses.
It is 4 Roses.
Oh damn!
All right,
I knew it was Roses. I just didn't know what the number was.
I think we can chalk this one up to a tie, which is super impressive,
Yes.
David, because you're not a bourbon guy and I am. And so,
Yes.
so it really.
And the
it
fact
really
that he didn't
shows-
cream you, he really tried to put this in his favor.
100% this was actually skewed towards me, even though Ashley never does that. She screwed up and skewed it the wrong way this week. You did awesome, dude. Good battle. I'll drink to that.
Yes.
Cheers.
Cheers. Imaginary glass.
All right. Do we have anything else for this show, Ash? I can get
No,
rid of
I
them?
think this has been one hell of an episode. So I appreciate you being on here, David. I appreciate
As
getting your insight.
as amazing a guest you were, David. Really enjoyed the conversation. Fantastic, dude. I really want to have some bourbons and whiskeys with you the next time we're together traveling somewhere. But in the meantime, get the hell off my show. We got him. He's gone.
Yes, that was so much fun, and I've learned so much from him, and I feel like we need a round 2 with him because he's just a wealth of knowledge.
Oh my gosh, like super, super smart guy. But it's not just about the technology, and that's what I loved about this conversation today. It really talked about what it takes to lead people, what it takes to build a program, what it takes to build what it takes to build success. And it's not just about buying the right tools and being a nerd about the technology, which I loved. I thought it was an awesome conversation. Plus, he's a whiskey guy. Can't go wrong with that. So what else can I say? Give us the lowdown before we call it a night. Love you, Bree. That's fantastic. Thank you. I'm sure he's actually in the green room. He can still see it, so he's not technically gone, even though I kicked him out. All right, Ash, give us the lowdown. What are we doing with the remainder of this season? I believe this is the final episode for this season.
Yes. So this is episode 26 in anime fashion, I guess. 26 episodes. We are going into a holiday hiatus, and so definitely stay tuned. We'll be putting all our episodes out on podcast channels in the new year, as well as starting up a second season probably around February. So stay tuned. Follow us on LinkedIn. So follow JupiterOne on LinkedIn. Follow Cyber Therapy TV on Twitter. Follow me, Tyler. Pretty much any host that you've seen on this show, we talk about cyber therapy. So stay tuned for more to come. So with that, thank you so much for listening and tuning in. And
enjoy your holidays, people. Enjoy your holidays. Thank you so much for supporting us for the last 26 episodes for, excuse me, year number 1 of cyber therapy. We'll be back after the first of the year, after the 3 next holidays that are coming up in the next 10 weeks, which make it impossible for us to actually go live with any frequency. So thank you, Ashley. You've made this show super successful. We really, really enjoy doing it. And folks, get on, smash like, smash subscribe, notify, all those things. We'll be back after the first of the year.